Hello, this is my tutorial on shading and color theory. So, I'm gonna first talk about the color wheel, which you can see, which I have drawn here. Now, the color wheel, I would say, is very important when deciding colors because one of the main components of it, we have complementary colors, which complement each other because they work well. I would always say I whenever doing color stuff, these colors always go great together for the most part. Um, I honestly don't use complementary colors too much like this because I what I tend to do is I think it's better to change the saturation of them, which basically means how much color is in here. So this would have no saturation. This would be very saturated if you can see what I'm doing with this color wheel up here. So let's say I want to like color something down here. I could also grab then a darker, less saturated purple. And shade like doing that. Because personally, when shading with like a lower saturation color, this might not look too pretty, but you'll see. Whenever I shade, let's get a no, yellow. Let's say I want to shade this yellow ball right here. What I never usually do, because it just doesn't look as nice, is just use a darker shade of that color. Don't do this because it doesn't really look as nice. See, this looks somewhat nicer. It'd probably be better if I smooth it out more. See, this works nicely because they're complementary colors. See, you can see the purple in there. This does not look as nice because it kind of looks like vomit. What you can also do is usually sometimes when I'm finding shading, you can also use usually whenever you're shading, you can use colors on the other side of a color. So like for this one, you could use a slightly darker orange and it would still look nice. It all depends on the mood of the painting you'd want because colors, they can be either cool or warm, which can affect the tone of a painting. See how this is like cool. This has more cool colors in it. Despite yellow being a warm color, the fact that you add purple in it to it makes it look cold. And this orange shading on the yellow, it makes it look more warm. And then this just looks nasty. Don't do that because my painting style is more stylized, but that's because I use a lot of color in it. And this, I should mention that this tutorial isn't meant to be realistic. It's more of a stylized shading and painting, but I still think it looks really nice. So anyway, now speaking of complementary colors, warm colors, cold colors, how you want to make a painting, I'm going to open up my sketch here. Now you're going to be asking, well, how do I make a painting look really nice? It all depends on the mood of the painting. So for this first part, I'm going to do a more warm coloring of it. As you can see here, I'm kind of using a mac and cheese orange to color in my Corgi character. And that's because I want this painting to be in the day. So it's going to be a nice sunny day. She's going to be sitting in a grass field, just chilling. Don't know what she's looking at. Maybe there's a bird over there. Usually when you do a painting, you kind of want context, but this is just more to teach people, not to actually how to set up a painting. As you can see, I'm kind of messy when coloring things in, but that's okay. That is completely okay. Now, she has a white belly, but I personally like to avoid using pure whites like in the background here in a painting. And the reason for that is because white is so bright and it draws your attention. So I like to use a slightly off-white color. So it's not pure white, but it still kind of looks white. because it still looks white here. It's just I don't want the full attention of the painting. Because she is the focus, but I don't want you to focus just on her belly and where the white is. Because it still draws your attention, but not as much. And you don't... It's good if you want to have the piece to have a certain focal point, but for this, she is the focal point. So I want you to look at her as an entire whole, if that makes any sense. And then I'm also going to color in her bits. I'm using a very warm brown to color in her more brownish colors. Now you might be asking, can I mix warm and cool colors? Yes, you can actually, but usually when you want unity in a piece, you'd like to use more colors that work with each other, but you still want them to contrast, because if you just made everything like the same saturation and stuff, you wouldn't be able to tell what's going on. So, and I will get into what I mean by saturation in pieces. And usually for the eyes, I like to use a different white, maybe a little bit lighter. There we go. And usually when I'm coloring stuff in, I like to check the contrast on it. You see how all these, I usually change it to gray over here. You see how, like, in the ears here, how it kind of looks like the same as the other colors. So I want to make that a little brighter so it stands out more. Not as much, but it will be fixed when we start painting, and I will go into more detail about that. Now, I'm not going to... Actually, yes, let me focus on the background so I can tell you guys more about color. Now, because I want this to be a more warm grass field, you're probably going to be asking, how do you make green look warm? Now, I see this happen a lot, and I will see people go in with this very bright green, and I'm just going to say, don't do that, because if we flatten this a bit, it's darker, and it kind of like, it's not harmonious with the rest of the piece. Because with color harmony, you kind of, also grass isn't, color harmony is very important in pieces because it kind of brings everything together, but it also lets you, like, it makes the piece feel complete. So I don't like using pure bright green. I usually use a slightly desaturated one. Or not desaturated, but like slightly darker one. You can use a desaturated one, yeah. So this is a nice green grass color. And then for the sky, you might be asking, how do you make it look warm? Honestly, sky, you can make it, you can still bring cold and, actually, no, I don't really, color is experimental. You have to work around with it a lot before you can, actually, yeah. Color, whenever I do a piece, I'm always changing the colors because, no, like, you always want to see what your options are, or with colors. So I actually think I'm going to make this like a nice sunset piece. So it'll be a sunset in the background. Because I want it to feel more warm. And now I'm going to have to go back and change this grass color because it doesn't really work with it anymore. But that's okay. And there's also going to be some purples and stuff. Now, you might be asking, how am I supposed to make this all come together? Now, I will explain it in just a second, because I would like to, I'm a perfectionist, so you're going to see me pulling a bunch of stuff, so I think I might make this more yellow. Nope, that kind of looks radioactive. Yeah. And I'm going to have to change colors on our corgi here, but that's fine. So, usually when I'm shading a piece, I will just grab a random color, because I can always go back and change it later. And when shading, you want to figure out where's your light coming from. So I'm going to say my light is coming from maybe right in front of our corgi character right here. So it'd be like that. So I want it to be coming from the front, so the shadow will be behind her. Now, I'm going to say this. Your shading does not need to be super realistic if it looks cool. Don't tell art students that, they'll freak out. But, I mean, you still want to keep it realistic. You want to make sure the shading is, it needs to make sense, or else people will look at it and say, hey, that kind of looks funny. But for the most part, you can make mistakes. Art is all about making mistakes. Nothing needs to be perfect. If you try and make everything perfect, you probably won't enjoy it as much. It's okay to make mistakes. That's what you learn from your mistakes. Always try out what works. So when I'm shading, I want to keep in mind my shading style is always kind of cartoony, but that's fine. It's all about developing your style too. So that's pretty good. I kind of I always set my shading layer to a multiply layer so I can do that. I kind of want it to be have more dramatic shading, so I'm also going to go to the background here and also do that. I'm using very warm looking colors to like complement the piece. I will also do a colder version of this piece as well, so I can demonstrate both sides of the spectrum. Oh. I'm not very good at talking, so I apologize if none of this makes sense. It makes sense to me, so so yeah. I think I'm gonna. So usually when I run or color things, I choose this lock transparent panel or like lock alpha layer, and I just usually color over the thing to see what works. I think I might go with like maybe a pinkish purple. Yeah, there we go. There we go. I like that. It'll be kind of muddy looking, but it'll work better once I color it in. So I'm gonna do this. And usually when I have my sketch layer, I set this to multiply, lower the opacity a bit, and I change the color of the line art to work with the painting more. I did a nice little purple here. Now you might be asking, what now? If you're afraid of messing up the sketch layer, copy paste it, but I'm confident enough in my work to do that, and of course it's being funky, but that's fine. Yeah, there you go. And you can overlay it if you're like me and don't properly fill in the lines. So you might be asking, what now? Usually, I like to go in and like clean things up a bit. I might add some darker shades here. I kind of want to add some purples in this piece so it looks nice. And I'm going to say this. Whenever you're painting, always set it to grayscale to check it every once in a while to make sure it contrasts everything, to make sure it doesn't all blend together. It's to help things pop out. And one other cool thing I like to do to keep color harmony is color pick from another part of the canvas and add it in, because it might look weird, but trust me, it's all part of color harmony to make a piece come together. But you still want contrast with the saturations. See? That actually looks nice. You can still add in bits and pieces of other colors. And just kind of paint it all in here, kind of get the shading. You can also put some of that in here. Yeah, there we go. You get the green, but once you put it in there, it fits because of color harmony. Now I'm gonna say this. Don't be afraid to use color layers on like these layers. I don't know if you can see them here. I popped it open, but because I don't know if my program will record them. I know I've had difficulties with them in the past, but don't be afraid to use them. Now I'm gonna add some like light here so it can like look more pop out. And I'm gonna clip it over this layer so it looks. I tend to set it to an overlay. There we go. And one other thing that is very important, I don't see people do too often, is color reflection. Um, Whenever like light is always like reflecting off stuff, so usually in the darkest part of a painting, you have like light bouncing off because it just adds that touch of realism. Because if you ever look at something with a shadow, you will always see light kind of bouncing off it in the shadowy part. So just add it in there because light bounces. You can also have things reflect color off each other. That's another important thing. Like with this orange leg here, no, it might be reflecting a bit of green off the bottom, like that. So always keep this in mind when painting, because it will make your painting stand out a lot more. Also, don't be afraid to get weird with colors. Experimenting is important when doing colors. You will not learn if you do not experiment with colors, and it's okay if it looks like garbage. You will learn. Don't be afraid to experiment. If you expect all your pieces of art to look perfect, you will not learn. You need to make mistakes to learn. I know that sounds weird, and it's like, why would you want to make mistakes? So you can learn. Trust me, it's all part of the process. And I'm going to take some of this orange from the background and add it into the eyes here. Usually when I paint, I jump around a lot. You don't have to do that. I just can't stay in one spot for too long. That's just me, though. I'm going to smooth this out over here. I may add some color to over here. Some more green. And you can. Also, another thing I see people missing a lot is texture. If you add texture to things, it'll make it like look more alive. It doesn't even have to be realistic. Like I'm just doing like a cartoony fuzz here. It's not too realistic, but it adds texture. You're just gonna be painting, and experimentation is part of painting. I would say just find a brush, try about a bunch of brushes out, find the brush for you, because every brush is different, and if you keep trying a bunch of them, you will find the brush for you. Trust me. It's like what kind of nerdy anime thing can I compare this to? I don't know, but it's like finding your niche, finding your special brush. I have all my special brushes over here. I downloaded most of them. A lot of them aren't custom, except for this is a modified custom brush that I downloaded. I just added my own touch to it. But just finding that niche of yours to really, because I know a lot of artists say it's the artist, not the tools, but sometimes the tools can really add to it. I don't get why people get up so uppity about brushes and stuff, sharing them. It's just, I mean, I can understand some artists not like if it's a custom brush, I'm not really wanting to hand it out, but I don't really get the whole it's the artist, not the brush thing. Sometimes it can be the artist, because if you don't know how to properly wield your tools, it won't be as effective. But at the same time, if you can master that tool, it will be effective, because things take practice. I'm going to do her pupils. I tend to don't sketch them in because it looks weird. I'm gonna add a little bit of highlights. Honestly, you can make these eyes look more realistic, but I tend to make mine look pretty cartoony. And I always, when shading them like this, I add like pure white onto them because it really just makes them pop and feel more alive. Once again, a stylistic choice. This tutorial's not realistic at all, but it's something. So as you can see here, this is kind of coming together. And then usually when painting on details, I kind of just do a little line here, do a little line there, I add a little bit of shading there. Add that flip phone to the end of the arms just to really make it stand out. Now, I don't know if for the rest of this tutorial I will finish this painting, but I think you get the general idea of colors and shading. As you can see here, I think this looks pretty good. This is a warmer painting. Could probably be better. I'm going to fix her nose a little bit more just so it's more uniform. Might add a bit of a yellow highlight onto the top of here. And I think I might actually make it a little bit brown to complement the horns. Just add in a little bit of brown. Oh, I accidentally hit the thing to make it white. Then add her little things. And see, that's more of the shading is just, you just kind of find the colors and smooth them out. So, I know this still looks a little bit messy. I'm going to focus on the background now because usually when I'm painting a background, you don't have to make it super realistic. You can look at references. It's good to look at references, but mostly for background, you kind of want to follow the same rule. Might copy some of the colors from the main piece and the background because you want that color harmony. Usually when I paint grass, I just kind of do like random blotches of color. I might be asking why, because grass isn't really uniform, so it's gonna have like varying colors and stuff. And also, just for the sake of making a nice piece, I don't want a fully square canvas, so I'm gonna kind of shorten it there. Now that looks better. I like that more. Oh. And this is a very warm piece, so it kind of, it feels more warm. It kind of like, you get like a sunnier effect from it. Now you're probably going to be asking, how do you make it look more dark or more cool? Now I just realized I totally didn't save the sketch like I said I should. So when you're doing cool colors, you want to do the opposite, but with cool colors. So I'm just gonna go take the easy way out of this and do some overlays. I don't know if it'll work, but let's see. Nope. But you kind of get the idea with color. I might color over some parts of my sketch and fill them in later. Make this more green.